Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Freetown Lakeville School Committee to order at 7:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Could you call the roll?
Yes. Bob Noguera?
Present.
David Goodfellow?
Here.
David Davenport?
Here.
Carolyn Miller?
Here.
Here.
Clark? David Brown?
Here.
Thank you. Is anyone recording the meeting? I see we have Middleborough Gazette here. Herald News was here. Well, we have LakeCAM. Got that, Amy? Okay, I've been asked to grant a special request to our students so they can go see the great game going on in the high school if they can present their reports. So, okay, thank you.
Our student council will be going to MASC in Hyannis next week. DECA will be going to States in Boston, both at the end of the week. Shape held Mad Night auditions, and it's looking like it will be a good show. And sports, basketball is playing right now, and they're winning 32-28.
Very good.
32-28.
I only have one thing to present. The Music Boosters are sponsoring an event. It's called March Music. It is Saturday the 8th at 6 o'clock at Independence Harbor. You buy tickets ahead of time, and basically what it is you go and you have a dinner, and that's what the ticket is for. For the dinner, yep, and they have an auction where they auction off all great donations. There's some physical donations, and then some of the kids get creative, and what they do is they donate time, so they donate free babysitting or dog walking or like doing chores around the house cleaning. So
How about any cat sitting?
maybe cat sitting, you could negotiate.
Your cat needs to be sat.
You can negotiate with them. Tickets are on sale. You can purchase them with me, or Miss Me, Nico Fabian, Emily Doors, or if you know Leah Fabian, she'll sell them for you. It's a lot of fun, so you should come.
All right, thank you. Enjoy the game, and we want a full report next meeting.
I'm not leaving, but
Okay.
enjoy the game.
All right, I've also been asked to, and the committee just bear with me, to get the MASS certification for academic excellence for Jenna.
Certificate.
Christensen.
Well, actually, it's first on the list, so we're not asking
all
you to
right.
take it out of place, but thank you, yes, thank you. This evening, it gives me a great deal of pleasure on behalf of the association that I'm a member of, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, to give the Certificate of Academic Excellence. On a year-to-year basis, school districts are provided with that opportunity, and typically we ask our high school administration and guidance to make recommendations, and so I'm very honored this evening to make that presentation. She unofficially got recognized, but we took the certificate back at Brown University as part of another event, so it's not a surprise to her. Mom and Dad were not there at that event, so we're thankful that Mr. and Mrs. Christensen are here this evening. So I'm going to embarrass Jenna a little bit, so bear with me. And do it a lot?
Yeah.
Okay. To tell you a little bit about her.
You'll have your day.
And I haven't had the opportunity to find out whether or not she has received early acceptance yet from any of the universities or colleges that she applied to, but I'm sure Mrs. Money might be able to tell me, or someone, whether or not that's happened, or Jenna. But anyway, let's begin. First of all, she has a paltry 4.69 grade point average and ranks #1 in her class of 2011 students. In addition to that, you heard us, 211. Did I say 2011? Well, pardon me.
Wow, enrollment
Gee, that's
numbers
even
just got much better.
211 students. No, thank you for correcting me. And Jenna has been enrolled, as to no surprise, in a number of AP classes, as you see in the information that you have in front of you. U.S. literature, literature and composition, environmental science, calculus. She has been awarded, as many of our students have, but an honor from the state, the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. She's applied to 3 colleges, Brown, Amherst, and Brandeis. And have you received any acceptance yet? Not from those yet, and I'm sure there are a host of others. Obviously, she graduated as top in her class this June. A lot of people and individuals of Jenna's background usually are involved in a lot of things. They keep themselves pretty busy, and as you can see from her extracurricular activities, member of student council in grades 9 through 11, class representative, class treasurer, gets involved in tutoring our students in middle school, kindergarten summer reading program. In addition to that, she's busy in the performing arts, in choral groups and concert choir, select co-ed choir, the female choir, and the Summer Sing co-ed summer choir, drama club in our spring musical, member of sports groups at the high school level, volleyball, both the varsity team, also as a freshman. She participated. And on the outside, she dances a little. So she attends a dance studio and has time to fit that in her agenda, and obviously performing with ensembles associated with that. She's won numerous awards and honors, as you can imagine, the Harvard Book Award in grade 11. She's a member of National Honor Society for the last 2 years, was named Student of the Term for Unified Arts, has won an Excellence in Honors Biology Award, Most Outstanding Choir Member Award, an MVP in the Femme Choral Group, Most Outstanding Performance, a performer, if you will, as a freshman in the choir, Most Studious Dancer, Most Valuable Dancer. So to say that she's well-rounded is an understatement, but I think she represents the very best of what I think we've heard people talk about in this district, and it's one of those pleasurable events that you oftentimes don't get. And so I think it gives me great pride on behalf of the school district and on behalf of the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents to present the Certificate of Academic Excellence to Jenna Lynn Christensen. We're going to ask her to come up to accept this award. Excellence, here to affixed, my signature, but note that this is to Jenna Lynn Anderson. Oh, Anderson. Christensen, the author. And on behalf of our school committee and certainly our association, congratulations, because you deserve it. So. You might want to take a picture of Jenna by herself instead of me. Open the award, Jenna.
Oh, yeah.
27.
We also want to say, too, I think on behalf of all of us, and all of us who are, certainly all of you who are parents, Mr. and Mrs. Christensen, certainly, I must be very proud of their daughter. So thank you so much for letting us have her in our school.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations to you.
Oh, good. Great. I'll mention that. Wonderful. Great. Good. Okay.
With the committee's permission, I would like to take Ms. Alicia Brightman Cabral next to give us some information on a research project she's going to be doing in our district, if that's okay, so we can get her out of here. And
Get her out of here. Yeah. Yeah. Let me, by way of introduction, Leisha is here this evening, and probably she wish it was just a little research project. It's not. It's part of her doctoral dissertation. And as you all know Leisha, I don't need to introduce her, but Leisha is in the process of beginning to conduct her actual research, and she has asked, and we met last fall, and I wanted her to share some information about the research that she'll be doing in the district very, very shortly at one of our schools in particular. So I've asked Leisha just to share this with you.
please feel free to take the hot seat.
It's not the interview seat right now.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to talk about my research. And as Dr. Nash and I discussed, dissertation research generally tends to be something that you are the only person that actually cares about. And so I will try to keep my comments as brief as possible, but we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, providing any information that will be useful to you. First of all, I'm a doctoral candidate at Northeastern University currently. I've finished all of my studies, and I am now ready to do my research collection and and wrap up. I'm excited to be here because one of the things that the wonderful teacher team here was able to implement in the last few years was a morphological approach to vocabulary, which is using Greek and Latin word parts. One of the examples you can see is the great work that Mrs. Belanger has done. I'm sure you never fade off during school committee meetings, but if you ever did, you probably focused on some of these words and hopefully left with a little bit of extra vocabulary. This is part of the grade 4 through 12 scope and sequence and alignment of Greek and Latin that's been done in the district. Lots of research has been done, it's nothing new, that proves how helpful it is for students in acquiring language and vocabulary, in becoming better readers, and so it is a program that has been successful here as well. It's currently being done from the 4th grade on, as I've said. It's a wonderful way to prepare for things like SATs, for AP exams, for writing, for speaking, and certainly for reading. The part that is less researched and the part that I'm very interested in is now applying that to other content areas. And so what I would like to see with my research is how does that acquisition of vocabulary transfer to the content areas? I chose one area in particular, which is science. It's very conceptually based. Just from a very simplistic language perspective, if we're teaching a child a new vocabulary word in literature, we can usually attach it to something they already know. A story about a melancholy character, for example, you can say to a child, think of someone who's sad a lot, and they have an idea of what that is. You can even give them an example of a time that they've been sad, and they can understand that. In the sciences, however, every time you teach a new vocabulary word, you're also teaching a new concept. And so if you're teaching a child photosynthesis or osmosis, you're teaching a lot more than just another word. And so one of the things that I would like to see is if students have this background in morphological approach to language, and they go to their science classes, are they better able to understand the concepts in science in the 4th and 5th grade? The reason I chose the 4th and 5th grade is because a lot of research proves that that's the time when teachers switch from teaching children how to read, and children actually go from learning to read to reading to learn. And they are focusing on the content and science in particular. Some estimates say that a beginning biology course in high school has as many vocabulary words as a first-year foreign language class. And so there's quite a lot of vocabulary on the conceptual level that they have to understand. And so I'm looking to come in to meet with my former 4th and 5th grade colleagues and ask them if they can share with me as in a series of focus groups with the teachers who teach ELA and science, as well as interviews with representatives from each of the content areas and the 2 grade levels, 4th and 5th grade, to discuss any observations that they have in reference to this exact topic. And then a simple assessment will be given to students that will have a series of vocabulary words on it, some that they have had in their ELA course, some that they've had in their science course, and I've also added some nonsense science words that use the morphological word parts to try to rule out the variable of students' background knowledge, helping them understand what the words are. So have them make a viable theory about what a word might mean based on knowledge of the Greek and Latin word parts. So you can see why we're usually the only ones that care about this kind of thing. The implications are actually very great, because if it is something that is applicable to the content areas, it may be replicable in other content areas such as the social sciences, mathematics, and so forth. What this study is not is a study on individual teachers, on individual students. It really has nothing to do with strategies that are used in the classrooms or even lessons. All I'm simply doing is seeing if students who have had Greek and Latin in English class apply those concepts in their science classes. So it will not be any kind of judgment or evaluation of strategies in any way. The format is completely confidential. I actually have to code every student that's involved. I have to code every teacher that's involved. I even have to code the school. I can't identify the school either. If the district wishes to use the study in any way when I'm finished, you're certainly free to do that if you'd like. I can never identify you, but if you would like to self-identify, you're certainly welcome to use any of the information that I cull from the research. I will make recommendations. The district is free to use any of the recommendations that I make if you'd like. There is a letter that goes home to parents. I've shared this letter with Dr. Nash. Parents can opt out of participating. Teachers can opt out of participating at any time during the study. Any of those people can opt out of participating. Somebody can go all the way to the last day and then they decide that they don't want to participate any further. That's perfectly fine. It's not something that anyone is receiving any punitive repercussions from not participating. It's minimal amount of time for the participants, and there's no identified risk for participation for students or for teachers. My proposal will need to be vetted out and approved by the International Research Board, which is a thorough process done anytime there are human subjects involved. So I can only proceed if Northeastern University gives the stamp of approval. And so you can be sure that they will do an exhaustive investigation of all of my documentation.
Thank you. Anybody from the committee have any questions?
Good luck.
Best of luck.
Alicia, what's the timeline? 'Cause I think you're coming in this spring you hope to be done between.
Yes, well, I absolutely need to be finished by the end of the school year, but I hope to be finished by the end of April.
It'll be between now and the end of the school year.
Correct.
Your ABD status right
Yeah,
Please don't say those letters.
the biggest degree everybody gets, right?
Yeah,
ABD.
no.
It is.
Go Huskies.
Yeah, this is the hardest part. She knows. She'll get it done.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great night.
Thank you, too.
Dr. Starkey, next on the agenda. Program of Studies at Aponequid Regional High School.
And just so the committee knows, typically the committee will want to approve any changes in the program of studies. So certainly if there are questions you have or whatever, we're prepared to come back to you. But I think Dr. Starkey is looking for some confirmation because it will impact us moving forward and getting our students into the process of course selection for next year.
So I begin with a game update. 37-35 Lakers ahead.
Oh.
All right, you want to make this quick so you can go.
I do.
Enjoy.
All in favor? I also wish Leisha Cabral much success. I'm a fellow Husky. We started the program together. It'll be wonderful to see her finish as well. So thank you for your support of her. What you see before you, I think you're looking at a copy of the program of studies. What you see before you is a completely updated version of the program of studies. In December, I set to task with a group of people, including Dr. Nash, Dr. Dunning, Chris Smith, all the curriculum leaders at the high school, Paula Money, who is the guidance department head 6 through 12, our school council, and Janet Keeley, our guidance secretary, to kind of reinvent this document and make it a user-friendly academic planning guide reflective of the mission and expectations of our school, a guide that's reflective of our present offerings and our future goals. So I think if you take a good hard look at this document versus the old program of studies, you'll see just that. So bringing you through the updated 57 pages, I'll take you to the more salient things that I think would be of interest to you. So if you would just simply turn to page 8. I'd like to call your attention to the academic graduation requirements. So previous to the presentation of this document, there was a bit of a discrepancy about our graduation requirements. The program of studies last year stipulated 100 credits. However, it was brought to my attention that 2 years ago, this committee and the school council had agreed to 110 credits, which is much closer to the minimum recommended graduation requirement in the state of Massachusetts. So the update to 110 credits is necessary and also matches what this committee had agreed to and what the school council was aware that we were doing at the school. Also call your attention to the list of the 8 requirements specific to Aponequid Regional High School here for graduation. You will notice that there is an increase in mathematics. As of 2016, you now need to have 4 years of mathematics in order to graduate from Aponequid High School. And then also, you will notice that freshman seminar remains a half-year required course, and that we have specified the number of electives you would need to make the 110 credits required for graduation. Below that, we have inserted a schedule that reflects the current schedule at the high school and presents, you know, kind of the format so that parents and families can make decisions about when and where to pick elective courses and how to academically plan for their futures beyond just freshman year. You know, where are you going? And it also explains our academic option period. On the next page, page 9, you'll notice an insertion of the Mass Core graduation minimum graduation requirements, and you'll notice that there's a bit of a difference between ours and theirs, and a piece of that is the world language requirement for 2 years and the unified arts requirement. The discrepancy or the difference comes because of our schedule, allocation of resources, and the current contract stipulations around scheduling at the high school, and it is something we would be looking to evaluate as we move forward. I've had lots of fruitful discussions with Dr. Nash and Dr. Dunning and the curriculum leaders and Paula Money at the high school, and we are aware that we need to do something with our high school schedule so that we can increase our credit requirement and meet the minimum graduation requirements per the state of Massachusetts. So we've put those in there to start to educate people and open discussion up about what we need to do to bring our students to that minimum requirement for graduation. You'll also notice on page 10, another just important thing to point out, that we have removed what was formerly referred to as level 2 or college preparatory 2 classes from our school, so they are no longer represented here in the program of studies. What we are left with, however, is a number of courses that are considered unleveled, and we have made the decision that beginning with the class of 2016, unleveled courses will become leveled, weighted, and counted in your GPA. So you will no longer take a class at Aponequid Regional High School that isn't weighted and doesn't count. And we have a number of courses right now that are categorized as such. So that was a decision that was made. And just below that, we put in the computation of class rank and weighting for final averages and remove the level 2 distinction from that so that students would understand how their GPA is calculated. Wanted to show you page 12. We did some evaluating of our summer school and summer tutoring policy and decided to add another means of students engaging in credit recovery or making up for lost work, and that is actually, it begins on page 12, but it ends on page 13. We've added the opportunity for students to take online or distance courses over the summer for credit recovery, should they need to. And then another thing I wanted to call your attention to is page 14. That is the beginning of a relatively new section of this document. It explains all of the additional and specialized academic programming that we have here at the school. For example, the life skills program, which we currently run at the high school, was undocumented in our program of studies. So we found it necessary to put it in our book. It's an integral program here at our school. Dual enrollment remains. Event to Learning is an online distance program we've been using here at the school for credit recovery and to assist kids who might not fit into our traditional model of a learning atmosphere here at the high school. And then on the second page of that is Virtual High School, another program that we've been offering for, I believe, 4 years here at the high school that wasn't documented in the program of studies. So we've simply put it in print for everyone to see, as well as a definition of special education in general. And then the last thing I'll point out to you is page 16. You'll notice a new format for each of the departments. So what we've done is set forth a definition of what a department represents, what the standards are that a department is trying to achieve, and then we've put a planning guide for parents and students so that they would know what classes to take and when and what's available to them as elective options. So every department is set up in the same fashion. One nice part about this is that the document will be largely electronic, so we're not concerned so much with copying and printing, but making it electronic will enable people to be able to click and simply get information or contact folks you have questions about. You'll notice a directory in the beginning. And then one document at the end, page 49, is a blank schedule and planning guide that we are hoping that students will be using with their guidance counselors and parents for planning purposes. In addition to the document, I did provide you with a summary of changes, and on the bottom of the summary, it lists some of our course additions and deletions. short of getting specific, most of the deletions were courses that we were either no longer offering, so we decided to take them out of the program of studies, or they were courses that had become outdated, or we were meeting the standards and elements of the curricular and other areas. Course additions, however, broaden our AP offerings at the school. We're now up to, I believe it's 10 AP classes. We are offering 2 more elective courses in English Language Arts on a semester level, and we are trading out some math courses that have become a bit outdated to offer our students, particularly our career-oriented students, math opportunities, especially to be successful in that 4th year of math. That's okay.
Great job. I'm very, very impressed. Thank you and your team for all the hard work. At this point, I'd like to open it up to the committee. If the committee has any questions on the document before I answer to approve.
Hi. I just have a question because, so you said that there would no longer be classes that aren't weighted. So, for example, a gym class, would there be like an honors gym class and an AP gym class, or how would that be weighted in the, or say, for example, a choir or a band class, that would be weighted into the GPA and kind of?
Right, it's a very good question. Most of those classes would receive a college prep distinction. It would be very difficult to tell the difference between, I would imagine, an honors level gym and a college preparatory gym, but it's a very good question to ask. And that leads to a conversation I've had with a number of principals in local areas who all have the same concern. How do you grade something that might be a little more subjective? And then how does that play out into a weighted GPA? So we're still exploring the best options and how to do that for students. But most of our unlevel courses that exist in the program of studies would end up being college preparatory in terms of credit.
I know that.
The follow-up to that, Sarah, not to cut you off, but I know where you're going. The next step is to kind of do some adjusting about our weight distribution, so that you're not penalized for taking those types of classes.
Okay, because I know that for especially for some kids who aren't maybe as physically fit, or just no matter how hard they try, aren't good at physical activity, I know a lot of them might get angry or might get nervous about taking gym, because they're going to say, I don't want to get a bad grade in gym because I'm not as athletic as somebody else and get my grade penalized for it. Because right now they don't have to worry because it doesn't like add to their GPA. So just wanted to bring that up because I knew a lot of kids would probably have concern with that.
Great question, and a question that we've talked about with our PE teachers too, which leads PE teachers to do a little bit more of goal setting with students. You know, so you set a goal for yourself, and it's your kind of grade becomes less based on a performance, you know, can you score a goal, versus did you meet your own goals and what did you do to meet that goal? Good concern. That's good, Sarah.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the committee? Okay. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 8-0.
Really, Nathan.
Thank you.
Very good. Go
Thank you.
enjoy the game.
Thank you. I'll text you the score. How much?
20 seconds left, 53-54 them.
20 seconds in basketball, it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it can be, right.
Thank you.
She'll make it.
Okay, next we're to that part of the meeting for Community Speaks. Do we have anybody for Community Speaks? Once, twice, 3 times, sold. Okay. Under old business, facilities, capital plan discussion with Mr. Bob Souza.
So just by way of just bringing the committee back, as I think you remember at the last meeting, we gave you a pretty extensive multiple-year capital facilities plan, and wanted to give you some opportunity, and at the behest of the chair, we would be bringing this back for some specific questions that you may have, some guidance on your part with a process or direction that you would like us to move to begin to address these. We wanted to give you that opportunity to really look at that and to bring any questions back to us at this time. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Baker and then Mr. Souza.
Just a couple of things on this, and then after Bob finishes, I'd like to go over just a couple of update items that have to do with the budget in general. Essentially, in the budget, as it is stated right now, is $125,000 for our water treatment plant. We are under a requirement from the state to adhere to bringing it up to a present-day standard. In addition to that, in the budget at present is the money for security that we talked about in the executive session and so those two things presently exist in the budget. What our goal is tonight is to have Bob answer any questions for you that would help to clarify any of these items. If you need us to do more research on any of the items, or if you want to give us a certain direction as to how you'd like to proceed on some of these. We realize the list is very extensive, but you know, we can follow whatever path you'd like. And Bob is certainly here to answer any questions he can. And he's very familiar with all of these. And so we'd like to leave it open to you at that point.
I think if I might, just as a follow-up, I think we did explain to you that we had addressed I think there were 2 safety issues, and we addressed those. So we're really looking at a priority list that is grouped around structural, and I think those are ones that you may be particularly interested in giving us some guidance as to how you would like us to proceed, in addition to the phased improvement or replacement that we would normally typically have over a period of time, and then general aesthetic improvements, which would be our last category. So we really are very mindful of the fact that you're looking at almost $2 million over a period of time, and that certainly, you know, we expect that these are going to have to be addressed at some time, and some guidance as to how you would like us to proceed certainly is something that we would hope that we can consider, and maybe come back to you with some information about financial ways to do that or any other means.
Okay, anybody from the committee?
You want questions now or next time?
Well, questions now, so I guess I was gonna I'll go first and then. My question to Fred is, between the 2 elementary schools, we're looking at probably about $1.1 million worth of stuff that needs to be done. That's above and beyond the amount in the lease that we have in the lease agreement. So how does that work? And does it make sense at this point for us to start? And I know we're going to miss the deadline for this year, because I think the deadline is beginning of April, but to do a statement of interest, to do maybe a major renovation at Assawamsett?
Well, I think in terms of the first part of the question of the lease, we are basically in partnership with each of the towns on any capital projects of a structural nature that are, you know, over $5,000. So those would be, you know, the first step would be for us to identify what we see as the priority, and then to begin to work with each of the towns on those. One of the issues in terms of, you know, working with the Building Assistance Bureau is one of, you know, developing a plan and a direction that we would have to put forward. Unfortunately, a lot of these are pure maintenance.
Right.
And probably would not be looked upon favorably by them. But we could certainly look at, you know, in a longer scope than for this year, developing a plan for Assawamsett and where we should go from there.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, with regard to safety issues, I would think those would be #1 priority. I only see 2 items on the
Right.
last page that are.
Right, and we, I think, at the last meeting, Bob, we had talked about those, and we have begun to address both of those issues, so they're really no longer on this list. The one was the kiln, and we found that really it was used about once a year, and we were able to identify the fact that for the project that it was being used for, we could easily use the kiln that we have at one of our other schools. So that was not really an issue, and based on the cost to do what needed to be done, in that particular setting where the kiln is. It didn't appear to be cost-effective because of its lack of being used on an ongoing basis. The second issue is glass replacement, and actually, we were in that building and identified what we feel is a way to address that. Our issue right now is dealing with the cost to do that, because one of the discussions we had was to replace the glass and almost put up tack boards. This is in the corridors, in the building, the old building that faces 105, to replace that glass, which is almost set in rungs, and put in some kind of a tack board. And we really have to be careful about the fire retardant material, and Bob can speak to that, but he and I were talking about it today, in fact. Part of it is the cost, making sure that we can find something that's fire retardant that we can afford, quite frankly. Maybe Bob can address that a little bit more.
Even though there's quite a lot of woodwork in that building, and I mean, it's gorgeous, for the age of it, we have to be mindful of putting, fire-rated materials in the building. Whatever we replace has to be up to code. I mean, we have wood in there now, which is,
I'm not questioning this or anything, but where do these figures, have you actually gone out and looked to get estimates for some of these costs? Or this is just something I mean, I'm sure you're not just coming up with it, but I'm just curious. Is it professional estimates?
Most of these numbers, I'd say probably at least 50%, maybe 60% are actually real numbers that I've gone out and gotten quotes for.
Okay.
I've talked with vendors, and I've actually gotten some really good numbers. Some of them are, in my estimation, what they would cost. And to be quite frank, some of the asphalt pricing is probably a little bit low, and that was from me doing some quick measurements and some estimation on my own part.
Okay, I was just, yeah.
But for the most part, these numbers are real.
Okay, and you've called, I'm sure you've called local vendors just to kind of get a correct, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
To the degree that there are some that you would like us to pursue further, we could go out and update those estimates and do that. I mean, obviously, those are too extensive to do too many of them that way, but we
Right, but I'm just looking at the bottom line, and
Right.
it adds up
Yeah.
quick. I
Right.
mean, you just want to say, is this
Right.
close? Is it?
Right.
Yeah,
way
yeah,
off,
we
or-
believe it's close, but it's clearly, it's clearly an estimate that some of them were based on a point in time that since passed.
Okay.
And that's actually another good point, where some of those estimates were from a couple of years ago, that I have done research, and I just used those numbers and just inserted them in these places. We've had a capital, kind of a running list for a few years now, and some of those numbers were just carried forward.
Okay. So they could actually
They
be
could
low.
fluctuate
They
one
could
or the
actually be
other.
low.
It could be a little bit low. We
Yeah.
could find out that the, bidding climate or whatever is better, and it goes the other way. It just depends,
Right,
really.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. The athletic bus, that's a separate vehicle from our other vans?
We have our, it's a 12-passenger vehicle, and we use it for the most part, the golf teams, freshman teams, the smaller sports groups, and the high school uses it for after-school activities, field trips. Actually, DECA uses it as well for transportation.
Okay. Who operates that vehicle?
For the most part, it's coaches. Actually, there have been times when teachers have used it, Frank Roser in particular.
Okay.
Yep.
For travel
For,
to
yeah,
school
DECA
events
and
and
that.
things like
Right,
that,
did small
but
group
without
competitions.
students?
Right,
Correct.
yep.
Maybe a question for Fred. So it's used to bring smaller groups
Correct.
routinely, like the golf team would have to travel every day
Correct.
somewhere to practice golf?
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be feasible to use a contract service for that?
No.
Right, okay, all right, that
And then,
clarifies.
and it's actually, for the most part, they're small groups.
Okay.
So yeah, so I don't think it'd be cost effective.
So what type of requirement do we have as to what vehicle that actually is for transporting students? And are we required to provide a specific type of vehicle? And if we are, how come we are then not therefore required to have a bus driver, a licensed bus driver? Like a 7+D certified pupil driver?
Yeah.
I believe it's because of the size of the bus that it doesn't require a school bus driver's license in the same sense that you would to drive one of the big buses that Durham provides for us.
Also, I think it's not on a designated route as well. It's used infrequently by small groups for just a one-time trip.
So we, well,
The
so
size of it does not require a special license.
where I'm trying to get
Yeah.
with this is, do we have to buy a school bus? Or is there some other vehicle that?
This is not a school bus, it's a van.
Yeah, no, we don't have to buy a school bus.
All right, well, I meant a van. I meant a pupil transport
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
specific vehicle. I mean, could we get a minivan? Would that be big enough? Or, you know, or is the situation require an 8-passenger van?
To be-
Or is it bigger than that?
Yeah, to be quite, well, when we,
So it's a 12-passenger van?
yeah, when we transport the golf team, when they have their bags and stuff, their equipment,
Right.
we actually need the size. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thanks. I appreciate the education on that.
That is the, oh. Michael?
I think this is,
As far as the track, I know there's two options. There's one for resurfacing the track or one for replacing the track.
Correct.
Obviously, replacing the track would buy us a longer period of time. How much time do you estimate resurfacing would buy us?
I was speaking with the vendors, a solid 10, 12, 15 years, if it's well, you know, cared for and looked after. We keep the water away from it, you know, make sure the drainage is working. A good solid amount of time.
It is important to note, though, on the track that, you know, we need to do something in the near future, or,
Correct.
you know, we're gonna lose that opportunity.
And then it's gonna be a total
we're gonna have to do the
replacement.
whole job.
That's kind of where, because that being such a big ticket item, is I'm almost wondering if that's something that we should handle through indebtedness. You know, because I don't know that either town's going to want to come up even with the $100,000 or their share of it.
There's, that certainly is one possibility. Another possibility is something that Bob and I have been exploring, and that's the idea of performance contracting, where we would work with, you know, we would put this out to proposal. The state has a specific proposal procedure, and get a company that would come in, look at it, you know, either one designated school or a number of schools, or the complex itself, and give us a set price to do certain projects, which, you know, we could pick the projects to be done. And then essentially they would work with us and we would finance it through a bank. Unlike a typical capital process where you'd have to have the money up front, we would not have to do this. It works particularly well in things like HVAC, where you can recoup some savings from your fuel costs and energy costs, and therefore that becomes part of the payback. Now, it does still require a long-term commitment because, you know, once you go out and do the work, while you can certainly go to another vendor or eliminate the vendor, you still have the financing vehicle that still does have to be paid over time. So that's another possibility, as well as you suggested, that, you know, certain things could, some of the things on here could be packaged and could be bonded. Some of them cannot because they're too small and are just blatant maintenance.
This approach typically works pretty well when it's related to energy and, you know, heating, where you're going to have savings. So significantly, the impact of the budget is less when you're paying off your loan, if you will, because it's the difference between what you used to pay for it, the improvements that were made, and the savings that you got as a result that you can now put forward toward that monthly payment that you're making, or whatever, quarterly payment to the bank. You know, in this case, with a track, it's not going to obviously solve it. But certainly you can look at something like that. And that's really what we're really looking for, some direction. If there are some items here, particularly that you have strong desire for us to begin to look at, then we would need to be able to look at those items, see what the cost is, and come back with some kind of financial plan for you to consider.
A number of communities have taken a group of things that by themselves are probably too small to bond because the bonding cost is too expensive, and combined them together and bonded them that way and gone that route, where you would have a half a dozen items, you know, and making, you know, there's basically an economy in scale in bonding, and that your administrative costs are too high if the bond is too small. But in going that way and putting it together and moving forward with it.
Tell me about the AES head end closet.
Essentially, and this goes back years, we were in dire need of space, especially when we had all the students in there. So we were fitting things in nooks and crannies. One of the things when we started doing the technology improvements, and this is probably better suited for Craig to answer, but one of the things we did was we put in a couple of servers and some technology equipment in closets, just because, quite frankly, there was no space for them. And these rooms are small in nature. They don't have exhaust, and with this equipment, it actually builds up heat. So what we need to do is get the heat out and actually climate control the spaces. Because and Mr. Nagara can testify, computer technology, it doesn't like heat.
So right there, that being your head end, that's your communication to the outside world.
That's correct.
Telco goes
Yeah,
through
so
there.
what we've done is we actually created some mechanical ventilation, where we've put in louvers in doors, and we've created some airflow just to bring the temperature down.
Take care of itself.
Right, but what we really need to do is put in some sort of a DX unit, just to bring the temperature down to, like, 68, 70, just keep it nice and cool.
And when we went to whatever we're doing now, DSL, did you go to DSL a couple of years ago? Is that what we're doing?
No, they're doing Comcast.
So it's all
they're
Comcast, so
doing-
the phone is going through that space then.
Mhm.
Dave, do you have radios going? Your radios are where?
Not there.
Right, principal's office or something like that?
For, right, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a portable radio.
Yeah,
Okay.
like portable.
So,
Yeah,
can we
yeah.
authorize this happening now? 6,800.
I don't see why not, make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize, make a motion to at least get quotes, so we can authorize having this happen
Sure.
in some expedition, because we lose the equipment in that closet. I don't know what else it's gonna do.
And we just spent $1 million on technology, not that Asa wants it, but district-wide, so.
I mean, it also could be a safety or other
Definitely,
concerns.
especially
locked
with
in those closets,
park
right?
coming soon to the lower grades.
We could wind up spending a lot more money than air conditioning in that room, in those rooms.
Absolutely.
So I'd
Are
like to-
these, I'm sorry, are these spaces large enough to, adequate for building, for a future building of more computer?
I believe so.
Okay. In other words, we're not gonna ventilate this
No,
space and
I-
have to go back to the closets.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, well, it can't.
Yeah, the
I mean,
servers
they can't-
actually, yeah.
The servers,
They're getting small,
right.
yeah.
It's
They
getting
don't take,
smaller.
Yeah.
they don't take a lot of
True.
space like they used to, all the racks, yeah.
But they still generate a lot of
They
heat,
do
though.
generate,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smaller but hotter.
okay.
So,
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
may I have the motion again?
I'd like to have a motion to pull quotes and to get this done if it falls underneath 6,800. Just to do it.
Just one more thing. I mean, obviously, I'm okay with that, but I mean, is that what you're gonna do? You wanna piecemeal it, or do you wanna, how do you wanna do that? You wanna do a vote on several things, or you just wanna do one individual, or how are you gonna approach that? It's really up to you.
Well, this is the only one that I have a motion on right now, and then my own personal feeling for the rest was that it probably should go to the regional FinCom to get the towns involved.
I agree.
And then we'll see what the town's appetite for some of this is, or all of it, and,
Excuse me.
That was just my personal feelings and my personal.
I agree.
And to respond to Mr. Brown, I'm right there with you. I don't see anything else on this list aside from the #1 priorities that will actually affect the school as a whole, like fencing around the ball field would be great, but in this regard, we could be losing something right now. So I just
Right.
want to try
Yep.
and put a cork in that before we wind up having more problems.
Yeah, it's definitely a safety issue in my
Okay.
mind, so. All right, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, any further discussion?
The motion is to get estimates?
And to move on and to do the work.
It sounds like you wanna get the work done.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any question about whether it's a town responsibility or a district responsibility? Because it's at Assawamsett?
If it's over 5, we would have to have some
Can
conversation.
we take it with us if we vacate the building? And I'm not saying we're vacating the building.
I'm not sure that you could. No.
It's really,
No, it would be part of the building.
It's a good point.
capital.
That might be something that Lakeville needs to do in that sense.
So we would obviously engage them and make them aware of it. I don't really see that they're going to say anything, we're not making modifications to the building. It doesn't have an impact other than to probably make sure that we potentially don't have any issues in the building with respect to the heat. So, but we would certainly engage them. The language in the lease, even though it's not been signed yet, does indicate that anything over 5,000, we need to at the very least, have some discussion and bring back for authorization. We will. And that term is, I'm using it very broadly. So we would do that if the committee sees fit to approve this.
Fred, what's our deductible on insurance?
5,000.
5,000?
Yeah.
Okay. And we've obviously got more than $5,000 worth of equipment in there, so it's kind of an insurance
sure.
policy on it. The other,
And the equipment could go with you when you leave.
that's right.
You
Go ahead.
just to get the
If we
thing,
leave.
just to get the thing going, we shouldn't have the dialogue with the town holding it up. So if we amend the motion simply to say, let's get the price, and then we have a lot of meetings coming up that this can get added to an agenda. So if we go out there, get a firm price, know exactly what we're talking about, and then we can pull the trigger maybe next week or 2 weeks from now or something like that. And
We
in the
have
meantime,
actually a meeting
try
next
and engage the town with however we need to.
Yeah, I mean, we would let them know.
that
I mean,
all
as a
legally.
courtesy, we certainly, I don't anticipate that they're going to say anything, but I think it would be important for us to say, even though the lease is in their hands at this point, and we've had discussion, that language is in that lease, and I think it would be important for us to at least let them know. I doubt very much they're going to say
Let's not let that hold us up.
No, I don't anticipate that it will. Yeah.
How big is the room, Bob? Just out of curiosity, like 10 by 10, less than that?
It's probably a little bit larger than that. It's probably 10 by 18-ish.
Okay, so that's 180 square feet.
So that's a block of ice every, 2 days? You could just throw.
So you might be able to do that for less
Had the
than
cool drives of ice.
the 6,800 then.
Possibly.
Okay.
Harvest that from Assawamsett, do
So,
it in the winter.
could I have an amendment on the motion that if he can come in less, 68, to get price quotes, but if it comes in under 5 or less, he can move on it?
Second.
Okay. All right, has everybody got that? Okay. All those any further discussion on it? Nope. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. I do have one question looking at this, Bob.
Yep.
We do have, it says replace domestic hot water tank, and I'm not advocating for a particular business or anything like that, but we do have one of the world's largest, not largest, but one of the world's most efficient manufacturers in East Freetown on Brayley Road, heat transfer products.
Okay, yep.
Is there any chance we could give them a call and see if they want to do this for us? Get a hometown discount?
Absolutely. I can certainly give him a call.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, two quick questions. The Assawamsett was it a generator for Assawamsett? Did I see that? Yeah, replace generator for Assawamsett. Just perhaps you know already, that's a designated emergency dispensing site for the town of Lakeville.
Yes.
May make it eligible for a grant through FEMA or Department of Public Health. So maybe hooking up with the Lakeville Board of Health.
Okay.
Might be a good idea to see if we can qualify for a portion or all of or some of grant money to provide a generator for the building, which is our emergency dispensing site.
Okay.
So,
I will do that.
Does Lakeville have a civil defense department?
no, we have emergency management, but not civil defense.
All right.
Perhaps you mean the same thing.
Yeah.
We have emergency management, MEMA, and so you can get in touch with Chief Hopkins about that.
Yep.
Larry Perry is a good resource through the Board of Health. Yep. But I'm quite certain that our EDSs are eligible for those types of inclusion and consideration for those types of grants. And the
Okay.
generator would definitely be on that list.
Is it an emergency shelter? Town of Lakeville? No, it's not.
No, but it's our emergency dispensing site, so.
All right.
If, just like your Freetown Elementary is, that's where we did the H1N1 for
Yeah, but
Freetown.
that's
and
also a
Hayward.
shelter, a designated shelter too.
Right, but you'll have this middle school too.
All right.
Well, we have a
Anybody
joint
else?
shelter you
Go ahead,
didn't
Mr.
know
Block.
about. No, I got another question.
Oh, all
I
right.
said I had
Sorry.
two. The second one is the baseball field. Is that used by any other entity other than varsity baseball at Aponequid High School?
Yes.
Okay, and
It's,
what are
it's,
those
it's
groups?
rented out for the whole summer, the entire summer. And in the springtime, we rent it out in the evenings through Jim Cabusio and the facilities group.
Great, okay. And is that a community recreation?
Correct.
Could be, yeah.
Type thing?
Yep.
Thank you.
It's used quite often. And actually, it's actually for the betterment of the field. By being used so frequently, it actually keeps the weeds down and keeps the field in good condition.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clark next,
Yeah.
then Mr. Davenport.
On page 2, the last item under the high school and the second item under the Grays, they're both rebuild media center HVAC units. I see the rationale for the high school, and I'm assuming the rationale for the pool room was covered in Mr. Davenport's brief presentation, although it wasn't that brief. Is there any? I had to get that in.
Yeah. He's still trying to figure out why Lakeville's named Lakeville and there's no lakes in Lakeville.
So I see a 2 and a 4, and I guess I'm a little confused by that. I think the media center is a pretty important part of the building, and I'm wondering why that comes in as a 4 priority. I'm not questioning the pool. I'm not questioning the pool priority.
Under the high school media center?
The last item under high school, rebuild media center HVAC unit.
For the most part, the unit operates. I think it was last spring, we had a meeting here, and we actually lost all the refrigerant. Yeah, everybody it was 90 degrees in this space. So it is problematic, and it is actually starting costing us money every year to maintain it. And for the most part, I foresee this unit failing within the next
Well, that's what
maybe
caught my
5
eye.
years, yeah.
Failures are expected. I mean,
Yeah.
I would think that would be a higher priority than number 4.
Everything's a priority on this list. I mean, the reality is just trying to do a 2, 3, and 4. Was just impossible to rate them, so that's why we did categories by names, because it seemed to be better. But, everything is really a priority. It's not $2 million worth of fluff. It really is serious, work that needs to be done. I mean, we had a conversation today about the HVAC system in the pool, and unfortunately, it appears from some of the individuals that Bob has brought in that it may not be that the way to go would be to do any kinds of major repairs to it, because you could spend that money, albeit up to $40,000, let's say, and find that in 2 or 3 years, you're in trouble. So why would you want to spend that unless you had some guarantee that it's going to last for a period of time? So, I mean, that's going to be a major issue. What we're trying to get at is, if you see some areas that are big money areas, not the ones that we have to go out for bids for, or we have to go out for quotes, then potentially we might be able to begin to address some of these. Nickel and dime them along the way. We're still obviously looking and hopeful that we've got some revenue left at the end of this year that isn't going to be intended for use for our budget for next year, that we could potentially say, okay, we're ready to go. What has the committee identified for us that might be $10,000 and less items, or $15,000 and less? What have you prioritized? Here we go. Let's start, ticking them off and get as many done. To do that. So, but the larger ones that I think you really need to address, the track, the pool, those are big ticket items, and maybe we have to come back with some way that financially that we can afford those and have that those conversations.
The bonding I'm sorry.
It has to go. Yeah.
The bonding has to go through town meeting vote?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
That's
you're
why I had
exactly
said
right.
that
Yes,
maybe we just
yes.
start out with
Yeah,
the regional
right, so if
FinCom.
that's what
FinCom involved.
you're telling us to look at some big items that would require that, then we want to start having that conversation sooner than later, yeah.
Mr. Davenport, and
Be brief.
please take as much time as you need.
Bob's got to bring one of those 5-hour energy things, that you can get in the general store there. Real quick, back to the track.
Yes.
We had a presentation from Mr. Cabusio 1, if not 2 years ago, about the tennis courts and the track.
Okay.
And at the time, we were favorable to some repairs going forward. The cracks got filled in the tennis court, but nothing else was done.
No.
As far as the resurfacing of the courts or anything to the track at all.
Correct.
Right, so back then, we were told that the track was in its final years, that something had to be done. So how close are we at this point, do you think? And the other part of my question is, like for me, trying to fulfill a New Year's resolution to lose some pounds and walk a few laps,
Right.
not a problem, but, high school athletes using a track that's starting to degrade, running at full tilt, are we starting to look at a potential safety issue if that surface is not the way it should be?
Right now, as far as the track condition goes, lane 1, there are spots where lane 1, the rubber is actually completely failed. Not a lot of spaces, but small areas, maybe a foot, maybe 8 inches, that it's actually encroaching into the lane. So to answer your question, yes, it's actually starting to become a safety issue. Over the years, we've developed cracks in the surface, and we've brought in contractors, Cape and Island Tennis to be, is the vendor. And they've done small repairs, and actually, if any one of you walk it, you can actually see the patches. It's a different color blue. So we've actually tried to maintain with what resources we've had. But we're getting to a point, Dave, that if I had to look into my crystal ball and forecast it out, I'd say you could probably go out max 5 years.
And
And then you're at a point where you're replacing it.
so I think the issue is, do you want to spend 100,000 or 300,000? That's really what it comes down to. If we, if we were able to resurface it with a rubber, it's 100,000 roughly. And then if you let that continue to go, it will continue to degrade, and we'll be having to replace the track, basically. So, I mean.
And then ultimately, if we get some more severe winters, I mean, you've seen actually the asphalt outside. We're getting potholes everywhere. That's really no different. The moisture gets in there, it gets under the asphalt and starts popping things. So if I had to guess, you're probably looking at 5, but maybe 3.
In that 5-year period even, we're gonna be getting more and more into patches and areas where the safety issues that are
Lane
gonna
1
be cropping
may
up.
become unusable.
Yeah.
That'd be tough to do any kind of
Correct.
track meet or anything without a lane.
Correct.
Without a lane 1,
That's correct.
where everybody wants to be.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, is there a requirement to have a rubberized track? I mean, in the old days, it was cinder tracks.
Yeah.
To be quite frank, I don't know the requirements. I don't know that everyone has a rubber track. So I don't know.
Uphill the whole way,
Yeah.
all the way around,
Yeah.
uphill.
In the snow.
Both sides.
I don't think that whether this is the surface you have, unfortunately or fortunately, and the problem is, you've got to either do something about it or not, and then it will end up being cinder because we won't have anything at that point, yeah.
I just like to, I have no problem with sending this to the regional FinCom, but I think perhaps after this and the previous conversation about it, there should be a caveat to that. Whatever decisions get made about anything else, that we let the FinCom know something about the track we want done this year. Don't come back with, don't do the track, come back with one or the other.
Yeah.
That one in particular, I think we should emphasize that. Everything else, debate to your extent, but the track, we want a solution with, before town meeting,
Yeah.
how they want us to go.
You're right.
Exactly, a recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the problem
Yeah, it is.
All right, anybody else have anything for Mr.
Cost of
Souza?
removal, just like tile,
All right.
tile and bait, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Souza.
Absolutely.
I just had, it's not per se on facilities, but just 2 other sort of items to kind of update you on going along with the whole budget, as this item was on for. Under the sort of good news, bad news theme, the good news is that we have about $150,000 that's built up in the choice account. We have 23 students right now who we received the $5,000 a year on. Most of them will be with us again next year, whether we do anything with this any further or not. But we have built up about $150,000. It essentially is money that cannot be used for capital, but it can be used for operating expenses, especially those tied to students. So it's sort of one more chip that we have in the whole budget process. The bad news part is that we did get the quotes on the special ed transportation, and none of them are better than what it costs us to do it inside. We made the specs far less restrictive than they've been in the past, where we didn't try to get the companies to buy our old vehicles or some of the things that some of them said were negatives in the past. But, we're really not, we wouldn't save any money with any of the vendors at this point. So that, we had hoped that we might be able to come up with something there, but unfortunately we haven't.
Why is that bad news, though? Because in my mind...
Well, we hope to save something. so
No,
we
yeah,
thought-
and I understand that, but in my
Yeah.
mind, though, the special education parents are very comfortable with the drivers. Our
The
drivers
service is
provide-
very good. The service is very good.
Provide excellent
Yeah,
service.
Yeah, it's good service.
Except for when animals in Lakeville run out in front of the van.
Yeah.
But, no, but on a serious
Yeah,
note, I mean,
yeah.
we provide a great service at a great price, and
Yeah.
we're employing local people in the community. you know, and everybody wins.
Yeah, it is a good operation, and the service is excellent. It just, we hope to maybe contract out for excellent service at a lower price, but unfortunately, we can't do that.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? I do have one quick thing. Just want to poll the committee quickly. How many people are going to go on, we have a site visit March 5th in Somerset. How many people are going on that so we can let Mr. Maderas know so we can prepare? I'm going, so that's one.
I'm planning on going.
Okay, so Mr. Davenport, Ms. Gomes?
Hold on just a second.
No? Okay.
I am no longer going.
Okay.
I am in on the 5th.
All right, so that's 4 of us. Okay, and Amy has them posted in case anybody else wants to go. So it'll be at least 4. Okay? All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.